Thank you. Yes, it is Grow and Grow launch Sunday, and I'm going to share with you the vision for Go and Grow. What is this project about? Why are we doing it? And I think the first thing to say is that we want this project to be driven by our vision, that we want to be focused on what God has called us to do and everything to flow out of that. And so our vision is, what is our vision? Transforming lives, changing the world. Well done. But underneath that overarching vision to see people's lives changed and then to go out in the world with the good news of Jesus Christ, underneath that, there are certain aspects to our church that we believe that God has specifically called us to. The first is that we believe that God has called us to be more than just a local parish church, to be like a regional church, to reach out beyond the confines of just a little portion of North Finchley to a wide swathe of North London. God has called us to be a regional church. Secondly, God has given us a vision to be a big church. Now, that's not because big is best, or that every church needs to be a big church, because for some small churches are very effective. But big churches can do certain things that small churches can't. And we believe that this area of North London needs a large church. We're a reasonably large church. Across the nation, we're well within the top 0.5% of churches by size. And so I guess that makes us a large church. And we feel called to that. And then thirdly, we believe that God has called us to be a hub church. That is a church that reaches out beyond the confines of our own boundaries, so that we are resourcing all sorts of missions and ministries spread out across North London. And we're doing this through church planting, through missional communities, through other means as well. And so that's our vision. And that is the thing that has informed how we think about how can we provide for the mission and ministry of this church. So our church council, the PCC as it is called, has set a number of criteria by which to direct this proposal and to judge the proposals that we've been making. And so we set these 4 guiding principles. The first of the guiding principles is that our current building here at St. Barnabas is functionally obsolete. Now, this building is 100 years old, and it is incredibly beautiful, particularly in the inside. But it was designed for an era and for a type of church that has long since gone. And when you arrive on a Sunday and everything goes like clockwork, and you may think, well, what's the problem? This building seems to function perfectly okay. But actually, it's a little bit like the proverbial swan that glides across the lake, but underneath the water is paddling like crazy. The amount of effort to try and keep this building going and to try and make it work is extraordinary, to the extent that we have now got to a point that this building is negatively impacting the mission and ministry of this church. It is obsolete for what we are trying to do, what we feel the Lord has called us to. The second guiding principle is that ministry is more important than buildings. Now, buildings are important, but buildings are really only a tool for the mission and ministry of the church. And so if, as I've just stated, this building is now negatively impacting the mission and ministry of the church, and that mission and ministry is more important than the buildings, there is then an imperative for us to do something about that, to try and provide facilities that are appropriate for what God has called us to as a church. That was the second guiding principle, that ministry is more important than buildings. Third guiding principle is that we want to steward our resources very carefully. In other words, we don't want to spend huge amounts of on buildings if we can avoid it. But the truth is that buildings are incredibly expensive. Nevertheless, we are trying to so steward our resources that we spend the minimum amount necessary to get the quality of facilities that we believe that we need to fulfill God's vision for us. Steward our resources carefully. And then the final guiding principle is that our current back road location is not fit for purpose. For the type of church that we have become, a church that gathers people from far and wide, people from Bounds Green to Cuffley to Edgware to Enfield, all coming down these little side roads, gridlocking the roads practically every Sunday and occasionally during the week as well. This location is really it's not a good location for a regional type of church. And we want to find a location that is appropriate and that has the profile that is right for our type of ministry. So what would we like in our new church facility? Well, we've got a little bit of a wish list, and here it is. What would we like? First of all, we would like a high-profile location. The back road location is not fit for purpose, so we'd like, ideally, to be on the high road. That would be our first choice, to get a location on the high road where we can be seen, rather than this invisible church that we are at the moment in Holden Road, where it's easily accessible to get to. Our second factor on the wish list is we would like a large centre. Notice I say centre rather than church. Actually, our church auditorium here is quite large. But and that is not the most pressing need that we have. Yes, we would like a larger auditorium, but we have more pressing needs. We're desperately short on hall space. We're desperately short on toilets, on kitchens, on offices, on foyer space, on community space. We just haven't got enough of it. And so what we would want is not just a large auditorium. Yes, we want that. But we'd want a large centre of ancillary accommodation to go with it as well. Third thing on our wish list is we would like a purpose-built building. You know, a long time ago now, but we did look at a feasibility of converting this building. And the truth is, converting an old building has all sorts of inherent problems. First of all, you wreck the building, so you ruin the one thing that you like. And then you end up with a building that is compromised around its existing structure, with dark passages and rooms that don't flow properly into each other. And so ideally, we would like a purpose-built building. And then finally on our wish list, we would like an inspiring building. We're in a beautiful building here. We don't want to trade this building for something that is like a kind of warehouse. No, we want something where people want to come and worship God, where people, when they walk into it, they feel their spirits lifted and they want to worship our wonderful Creator and Savior. So that's our wish list. What's the plan? Well, here is Solar House, which is the building that we are trying to acquire on the high road. It's on the high road. It's enormous. It's a huge office block, a big commercial building, the largest commercial building in North Finchley. So large, in fact, that if we just get all the accommodation that we want, it's still too large for us. It's bigger than we need. And so the plan is that we would occupy as a church the south wing of it. And you can see that highlighted there. And that represents about 2/3 of the building. The other end of the building, there is a lift and stair spine there. And then there are offices. And we would maintain that as an office investment, which would yield a degree of income for us. And so that would remain as offices. What does it look like inside? Well, here's a picture of what it looks like. It's a massive open plan office which we can divide up and modify to suit whatever way we like. Then if we go around the back, let's look at the back. And you will see on the back there is this kind of 3-story little bit that protrudes out. And this is the key to what we're planning to do, because we are planning to demolish that 3-story extension. So now it's demolished, you can see there's a huge amount of space. Don't worry about the car park, because the vast majority of the car parking on the site is an underground car park that covers the entire site. And so we would build an auditorium on this space at the back. Now let's go to the plan. Here is the plan as it is, a floor plan as it is, just as an office block. And what we intend to do is knock down that little protrusion on the back and build our new church auditorium. So there it comes. You can see the north wing has got rented offices in the blue. That would be retained as offices. Then we would build a new entrance, a kind of atrium at the front, indicating that this is a public building now that people can come in and out of. Then the whole of the ground floor of the south wing would become foyer or cafe or reception, perhaps with a little chapel in the corner. And then you literally walk through the ground floor south wing into the new purpose-built church auditorium at the back. That's the plan. What would it look like? Well, next we have a sketch plan that the architect has provided for us, and if you look on your packs, you will see a computer-generated version of the same thing. If you're interested in more details about the building, how it's going to be laid out, and all sorts of factors that we're looking into, we're going to have a consultation evening just for the church, just for St. Barnabas, on Wednesday, the 1st of October, here at 8 o'clock. So get that in your diaries if you're interested to come out along and find all sorts of more details about the exact design that we're going into. Let's get back to our vision, because this is all about vision. What is our vision? Colin remembered it. There we go. Transforming lives, changing the world. And, I think the only real question that matters in all this is, to what extent does the Go and Grow project, the moving up to the high road into Solar House, to what extent does that enable us to better fulfill the vision that God has given us, has put before us? If we can answer that question positively and say, yes, it's going to help us to fulfill that vision, then it's a fantastic project. If it's not going to fulfill that vision, well, we may as well not do it. So what will this new building achieve? What will it provide, first of all? Well, first of all, it will provide a larger auditorium. We can seat around 350 in our current auditorium here, and we will be building an auditorium to seat around 550. So it's not enormously larger, but it's significantly larger, more than 1.5 times the size. Then it'll provide also more halls, and they would be better laid out. One of the struggles that we have here is that once you have one group in one hall, particularly if they want the kitchen, and they're quite noisy, it's almost impossible to have another group simultaneously using another hall. Whereas we will be looking to have this designed so that we can have multiple halls all in simultaneous use without them affecting one another. We want better office space. At the moment, half of our staff work in temporary offices on temporary planning consents. It's completely unsustainable, and really the office accommodation is very poor. It's very inefficiently laid out, and so we want to provide for that. Then it will also provide a cafe, a foyer, a shop, possibly a community space. We're envisaging this to be a public building that people will be coming in and out of every day. The public coming in and out every day. One of the problems we have here is we have literally no foyer space. We have no circulation space. We have no community space. To the extent that on a Sunday, we serve our coffee in here and we create extra space in our auditorium, and that restricts what we can do. There we will have additional space for all of that. Then there'll be better facilities, full commercial kitchen, for instance, showers for some of our homeless guests, for instance, all sorts of things that we can only dream of here. And then finally, it'll be a more efficient building. In terms of heat and light insulation and all of that kind of stuff, it'll be a much more efficient building than we've been used to. I mean, there is no heat insulation in this. It just goes straight away. We may as well be meeting outside. So to improve on that won't be a big challenge, but we will be wanting to make it as efficient as we possibly can and environmentally friendly. What will this achieve? Well, firstly, it will achieve a profile on the high road. And I don't think we should underestimate the impact of that. At the moment, we're like the invisible church. People do not know where we are. You can drive down Holden Road and you have to be practically on top of the church before you even see it. I don't know how they designed a church so big that cannot be seen from anywhere. It's a miracle, but not a good one. In contrast, Solar House is a very high-profile building right next to the main commercial centre of North Finchley. Everyone will know where we are. So it'll give us a profile in the community that we currently haven't got. Secondly, it'll give us a major regional centre. To some extent, we're not doing this project just for ourselves. I believe that the Go and Grow project is going to have repercussions for the whole of the church in North London. This is seismic. It's going to have ripples across all sorts of churches as we become a major resourcing church for North London. And we'll be able to do that having this major centre. Thirdly, it'll give us an ability to deliver more relevant ministry, a modern building that can adapt to the needs of the community in a way that this building can never hope to. And then fourthly, a bridge into the community. I've called it a bridge because we want there to be two-way traffic. We don't want, just because we've got a new building, to then sit back in our building and say, well, you come to us in our lovely new building to become purely an attractional church. Yes, we believe that'll happen. But we also want this building to be like a mission base from which to send people out, to send missional communities out, to send mission out onto the high road like the Healing on the Streets, to send missionaries out across the world, so that there is a two-way traffic, the community coming into the building and us going out into the community with the good news. And then finally, it will achieve the possibility of a future. And I say that because where we are now, it's very difficult for us to envisage continuing as we are in the long term. Half of our operation is on rented land on 28 days' notice of eviction. We just cannot, it's not a sustainable situation that we're in. Whereas, so we have to do something. Whereas this building will provide for the mission and ministry of this church for at least a generation and possibly beyond. So it provide a future. what will this look like? As we went into this project, I consulted with all the main ministry leaders of the ministries of the church and asked them to do some imagining and praying and dreaming and thinking, what would their ministry look like moved up onto the high road into Solar House? And what kind of growth projections can we then put onto those ministries so that we can start to plan for that into the future? And what came out of that is that the ministries that we've got divide into three broad categories. The first broad categories are ministries that will be enhanced by being in a higher profile location, a higher profile building. And first and foremost amongst those is youth, because youth range around in herds, don't they? They don't go singly. They're like the wildebeest of going across the Masai Mara, and they home in on visible, the happening place. And so we anticipate our youth ministry growing by 100% in the first 3 years of us being on the high road. That is doubling in size. Then there are Sunday services. We anticipate them growing by 50% over the same period. Conversation classes, something that's very sensitive to people knowing where it's going on. So we anticipate those growing by 120%. Seasonal events like the Winterfest and the Springfest, they're already absolutely enormous, but when people see where we are more, they will grow also perhaps by 70%. Then there are the ministries that will be enhanced by having better accessibility. And of course, immediately you think of the elderly ministry. To have a building that has good drop-off point for people, so you can get lifts in and out, has good wheelchair access, and so on. And we anticipate the elderly ministry growing by 50% in the first 3 years. The children's church, we envisage that outgrowing the adult church in the first 3 years, growing by 75%, because it's really difficult bringing small children to church. With your buggy and all the paraphernalia that goes with having children, it's hard work. If we can make that easier, and I think we can, that will attract more people. The same applies to children and families ministry and the parent and toddler ministry, growing by 80% in the first 3 years, we think. Then there are the ministries that will be enhanced by there simply being more resources in the building. The first one is missional communities, places to meet. We will have numbers of them. The homeless ministry and a food bank. Well, the homeless ministry, we anticipate that growing from being an easier location for people to get to and with more resources in the building like showers, etc. But the food bank, we don't even have a food bank here. We can't have a food bank. We haven't got the space. And so we would love to have that. That would be a startup. Sending out. Caroline Burns, our world missions pastor, really wanted that in there. She anticipates that the resources and the energy of the Go and Go project will lead on to us becoming even more of a sending church, sending people out across the world. And then finally, the biggest statistic of the lot, conferences. And that's partly because we're starting from a relatively low ebb. Currently, we run about 3 mini conferences a year, plus a number of training days, whereas we anticipate this centre being a major Christian conference centre for North London. And so we've put in 200%. That may be an underestimate. When I've spoken to people who have known of churches that have done similar, it's very difficult to find many churches that have done similar because this is pretty much new territory we're following, but there are some examples of churches that have done something similar, and they look at our projections and say they think we're underestimating. This is enormous. This is a massive project, far and away the biggest thing that we've ever done at St. Barnabas. promises to have a huge impact, not just on us as a church, and it will have that for sure, but on the kingdom of God breaking into North London. It's an incredibly exciting thing. I hope you're excited. I am. Take your packs, and let me just explain what is in them. Firstly, you will have a letter from me. Then we've just painted a picture of what St. Bees is like today. Did you know that we served 26,000 cups of coffee last year? And there are a few little stats there. What St. Bees is like. Then there's the background, and I've given you some of the background today, but on the back of that, there's the story so far. And if you weren't here last Sunday, I went through the story so far. It's been an amazing story of miracle after miracle, and we will be putting up a video of the story so far on the website in the next couple of days. Then a little bit about the new building. I've talked about that. And then a vision for tomorrow. We've tried to paint a picture of what the vision for tomorrow of St. Barnabas will be like, and some of the statistics there. And then the final sheet is on the money. The money I will speak to next week on how we are going to raise sufficient money to do this vast project. Almost more important than that, what God is going to do in us in the process of raising that money. You know, the next 6 weeks may prove to be the most exciting 6 weeks of St. Barnabas' life ever, because God is going to break into our hearts in a fresh way. And then finally, next week, I am going to share with you how Jane and I are going to respond personally to the challenge of that project. As a leader in the church, I intend to lead by example, and so I'm going to be sharing something of our own response in that. So that's next Sunday. Do come along and prepare for that. Pray for this. That's my presentation. I'm going to hand over to Colin.